How about this? Okay. I'll just start by saying this is a picture of our kindergarten grads last year in Evergreen School Division, and the reason that I wanted to point that out, because among the things that I have to say thank you for, I'll start so I don't forget them, and maybe somebody would tell on me. I got to thank my board. My board in Evergreen is incredible and have made decisions to support recommendations that are expensive. They're expensive investments in really important things to make sure that kids realize the outcomes that we've all been talking about tonight. One of those is full-time kindergarten. And so we're one of the school divisions in Manitoba that has full-time kindergarten. And one of the reasons that we moved to it was because we saw such tremendous gains when we had a good handle on how to provide good instruction and intervention in reading. So that's one. We also switched to single grade class configurations in our school division recently, which has made a tremendous difference for our teachers in trying to address teaching and learning among our students exactly where they're at, and trying to narrow the wide gap that can happen among kids as they progress through our system. So those are two investments that they've made, in addition to the many things that I'll talk about tonight that are related to the importance of professional development for teachers, the importance of evidence-based resources for teachers, and so on. So I want to thank my board for that. I also want to thank, of course, the Human Rights Commission and also Dyslexia Canada, not just for inviting me to speak, but for recommendations and advocacy. I'll note that, in fact, Dyslexia Canada is a very organized group advocating for practices that are not just to the benefit of kids with learning disabilities, but practices that are to the benefit of all children. And also, not to mention, as some others have said before me, being to the benefit of our teachers who may have been denied the opportunity to learn about these evidence-based practices, and whose consistent wish is to be equipped with the best ways to help their students succeed. And so I'm really grateful to the speakers before me to point that out, because my experience is that teachers always want to do the best by their kids, and whatever it is that's going to help them do that is what they want to do. And so that's part of the story here in Evergreen, which I'll share with you to the best of my ability. And I'll just also say that this is an our story thing in Evergreen. It's certainly not my story. I've got a table of staff over there that help illustrate this point. I won't name everyone, but I will just say that Jessica Warden, our Director of Programs and Student Services, for me anyway, started this conversation in our school division a number of years ago, and so I'm very grateful to you, Jess. And one of the things that Jessica was tasked to do very early was to try to eliminate what had been historically a divide between our student services staff, etc., and approaches, if you like, and our curriculum and instruction staff and approaches. So in Evergreen, this is a very important part of our story, is that we want to bring the full breadth of our expertise and experience to bear on every educational challenge that we face in trying to get our kids to have positive outcomes. And so that's a really important thing, and that's in fact where our story, to me anyway, really starts, is that a number of years ago, it was around the time of the pandemic, or just prior to, Jessica was tasked with this bringing together of curriculum and student services, and had some questions around how are we doing interventions, how are we managing the ways that students have access to clinical supports, all of those questions, and came upon some findings about early reading and early reading instruction that were surprising. We were a school division that was heavily into reading recovery, and a balanced literacy approach as described by previous speakers. And so I came to learn that we were saying things to parents and others that such as sounding out words is not a good strategy. And so that was seemed bizarre to me, somebody that didn't have training in early literacy or early years education. And so what then followed was, and the pandemic was kind of like a gift in this way, an incredible amount of research. And so the top sort of row there, guided reading, leveled books, F&P, reading recovery, this characterized our school division at that time. And then an amazing amount of research was put in place by Jessica, by our SLP, Brittany Morris, who's here as well. Just like an incredible amount of obsessive, deep research, to the extent that I want to point it out because I really feel like in our efforts to refresh the way that we do reading instruction and intervention, we left no stone unturned. So that's part of our story as well. It's digging in, trying things, learning things, seeing what's going to be the right elixir to help our teachers make a shift from where they were to where they are now. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. But I just wanted to point that out because we went through any number of names that you would have heard referenced earlier and more, and tried many different approaches and many different assemblages of resources. So that's kind of where we started, and of course we were then inspired by what we were learning around the science of reading. Also learned that was in some quarters a bad word, and much like I think Una just mentioned teaching spelling. For a while, teaching spelling those are bad words too. So it makes me wonder also, how many bad words are we still living with that ought not to be bad words, actually, turns out, if we dig further into the evidence. And so I say that in a school divisions that is exploring and seeing the benefits of explicit instruction, beyond reading. Right, and this is something that many people are talking about now too, in terms of what's the application for explicit instruction in mathematics and so on. So, and of course, we were inspired also by the pre-sold a story stuff that Emily Anford was doing. I started getting on the receiving end of all these podcasts from Brittany and from Jess and from Della and others, and that was sort of the APM reports that really highlighted for how long lots of this research has been out there, but not kind of at the avail of many teachers. And then when the Right to Read report came out in Ontario, that was kind of like we were already undertaking the change, but we really knew it was time to make changes to our practice. I'm going to get the direction of this in a second. So this is what we did and why. So I'll try to tackle some of these. So the first why was that teaching kids how to read is the most important thing we do. And so when we found out that some of the approaches might not be the most effective ones, we felt there was a moral imperative to do better. And so we wanted to, thanks. And so we wanted to do better. And I say that as I'm a teacher and I'm an educator and I care about how well kids do at school. And of course, reading is very important to future scholastic success. But as many speakers pointed out, there are all kinds of other things that are important about learning to read, at the top maybe of which is having access to the democratic conversation. So if this is what's important to us, making sure that we have a vibrant democracy, we need to make sure that we have a high level of literacy, right? So it's the most important thing we do. So that was our why, and then we had to change some of our practice. So for us, and I don't know how much detail is really super important to everyone, but we needed to build something because the first thing that I was going to do when I became superintendent was jettison reading recovery. And we needed something, and our principals knew that we needed something, and were insistent that we had something that would have the same kind of rigor and intensity and kind of like oversight that reading recovery did, but it was going to do a better job of making sure that we could intervene and help kids learn to read. And so we developed, I say we, I was present while this was happening. It's like, I cooked up a Tier 3 reading intervention. No, but our staff worked in partnership with Dr. Jean Sinclair out of Memorial University, and mostly I think I'm speaking about Brittany, Jess, but many others. And we ran this stuff back and forth with teachers too, and intervention teachers. We have intervention teachers in all of our K-6 schools, by the way. Another investment that our board has made. And so this was to build a scope and sequence to develop a Tier 3 intervention system that would replace reading recovery. And then we knew also that we had to take on the task of changing Tier 1 core teaching. And And so this is where we started investing heavily in resources and trying many, many different things, field testing them with teachers to try to figure out what was going to be really effective, but also like manageable and within the reach, of our teachers to use, right, and to make sure that they're having an impact. And so along with that, that meant investing very heavily in PD. My board's been very supportive in making sure that teachers have access to a high level of professional development, and that does include going to conferences and learning about reading and learning from, like leading thinkers about reading instruction, but it also meant that we could have, oh geez, I've already burned 10 minutes almost. So we also needed job-embedded PD, as you learned the importance of earlier, and that was mostly through our consultant, Della Magnuson's here, and that was putting her in classrooms, standing shoulder to shoulder with teachers, doing demo lessons, trying out the materials we were buying, and so live, like standing with people to try to learn what the tools are. And that's a very important investment, because sometimes you hear somebody talk about a way of doing things and then you're expected to do it on the Monday or whatever. It's like you need to be able to see it in action in order to really grab onto it. That's a model that we learned from the superintendent in River East, Sandra Herbst, who did a lot of work in our school division around modeling lessons and how important it is to actually see that at work. And so that's something that we really wanted to do. We invested heavily in resources, some of which are the DIBELS assessment that we use for screening. We use DIBELS, QPS, a quick phonics screener, and then we use UFly primarily in our instruction in classrooms and also in interventions. And so our intervention teachers are part of a very, I don't know how to describe it. It's a highly professional group that gets together to review their data, and this is led by our SLP, Brittany Morrish, and it's a very intense, high level of work at looking at how kids are doing and always striving to figure out how to do better. And it also includes feedback and celebration on our work. And so we were lucky enough to have Maggie McIntosh do an article about us in the Free Press, a way to celebrate the hard work of our teachers, because of course teachers are where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, and it's very important to celebrate their work as we make this change and see all the success that we're seeing. I'll just share a few. So here are some other pieces of how it's working. So you see there's like a, what do you call that, a pie chart? And is that what it's called? Anna? I don't know. Is that pie graph, pie chart? And so what it shows, this is a very important data for us, a data point for us, but it's grade 3 reading. And so it shows that we've gone from 23, 24. We've been at this a few years now, but we have gone from 57% reading at level to 78%, almost 70, I'll just round it up, I'll make it sound better, 78% reading at level. And we have a mid-education plan target at the end of 2026 to try to get to 80, and I think we're gonna make it. And so there are a number of other data points there as well to celebrate, and so not the least of which I'll point out, I think it mentions the success of our Indigenous students, but in the year 23-24, we made a 12% increase for our Indigenous students, and then we built on that and had another 8% increase for those students last year. So it's having a tremendous impact on some of the students among our population who historically have not fared as well. And that's so important to reconciliation, has been mentioned earlier, and so on. So I'm so proud of our team for making that difference for our kids in what's a moral imperative for us as well. Oh, kindergarten. Here's another kindergarten grad photo. And so our kindergarten students, of course, showed a tremendous gain over the course of the 24-25 school year. So among all the gains we made, there was something like 34, is that what that says, 34%? 36%, huge gains, consequential of the huge investment. And I think really moving to full-time kindergarten in combination with making the changes to how we address reading instruction and intervention in this province would just, I think it would be transformational. And I think it could happen actually in a relatively short time. You know, you're talking about a few years of investment, and the difference that it would make for so many kids would just be remarkable. Full-time kindergarten, please, for everyone, not just for the kids in Evergreen and a few others. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Writing is so connected to reading, of course, and as is spelling, as was mentioned earlier. Hooray for spelling. And so our writing results also have changed dramatically. So we've gone to these numbers that are in the 40s and 50s and 60s to numbers in the 60s and 70s in terms of the success for our writing assessments at those ages, at those grades. I'll just show you what some of the classrooms look like. So I periodically try to check in on the classrooms and see what's going on and what the reading success looks like. And so I went down to Lisa Michelik's class this morning and had a chance to watch our kids learning to read. And you can see some grade 1 students here. In a UFly lesson. So I'll just say a couple things about Lisa too, because Lisa was one of our teachers who I was most concerned about actually in terms of trying to drive the change. And so I checked to make sure it was going to be okay. I said this. I had a few conversations with Lisa about the change, and I'll just point out a few things because I think they're really important. One is that she said to me one day, in the midst of the change, it was really worrisome because it looked at first like the kids were not, in fact, reading as well as fast. So the eye test early was not promising. It's fair to say? It's like, but sticking with it now, you see tremendous gains. And so at first, and your teachers, or if you are a teacher, this might be something that happens as people make this shift. And I hope that they don't cut bait or get too worried. It's like if you stay faithful to the process, it goes well. And so here's some. You can't see this, but these are grade 1 kids with remarkable printing skills, also much better than even my own. And it's just a testament to what kids can do. So I said that I was concerned about Lisa, and at the time, I was concerned about Lisa. That sounded really weird. At the time, she said, because teachers struggle with the shift, making a shift away from something you've been trained to do a certain way for many years to something that is new to you and you haven't actually had a lot of exposure to. But she said at the time, I thought that this was going to be a hill that I would die on. It was not going to change. And she said to me just this weekend, it's like, now this way is the hill that I would die on. Because she sees the difference that it makes. The kids come to grade 1 and the skills are, it passes the eye test. In addition to the data and the numbers that you can produce, when you hear kids reading and you see what they can do, it's undeniable. So I'll just share what what the classroom looks like. Here's some show me boards. There's a little video attached to this that I'm not sure I know how to play. But unless this does it. Oh, it does. Yeah, fluency, that gets easier the second time too. So I wanted to show you this classroom. You can't see this. I tried to take a panorama photo from Lisa's classroom because we're talking about a very progressive classroom. And I need to point this out because here's what it didn't cost us to make the change. Okay, we invested a lot of money and time and PD, resources, all this stuff. Here's what we didn't lose in making the shift. It's very important to know this. We did not give up risky play. We did not give up nature-based learning. We did not give up land-based learning. We did not give up explorations. We did not give up read-alouds. We did not give up joyful classrooms. I was in a very joyful classroom this morning, I have to tell you, with a teacher who's a master teacher for many years at making sure kids think creatively, are critical thinkers, are collaborative, all the C's, and none of that was lost. And this is one of the things that Lisa said to me recently that I found so encouraging and a relief, right? We didn't have to give up the things that sometimes people think, oh, you're going to do that. This is Lisa having been converted to a drill and kill teacher. It's like, and so I just want to debunk that myth because it's just not true. We don't have to give those things up. We can have both things. Kids can learn to read, and we can also have explorations, nature-based learning, and so on. So here's where we are now. There's still things we know and things we don't know, but Teachers can see the difference. It works. There's data support it, but also passes the eye test. We're trying this thing, this is what I saw this morning, walk to reads. And so now we do this thing, if you know Stephanie Stoller's work, I think it is, and we do this thing where at the reading instructional time, kids actually go to the place where the instruction is going to be exactly what they need at the time that they're in. And this allows us to give extra to the kids that need it. And I was talking to Crystal Easfeld here, who's here also today, and she's an intervention teacher, and she was just telling me before the evening started that the results are amazing, and this is working incredibly. So we're trying still to be creative in all the ways that we can to bring as much extra help to bear for the kids that really need it. Beyond interventions teachers, beyond tier 2 and 3 interventions, we're doing now this walk to read where we can differentiate what kids are learning so that it's what they need. Here are some of the other programs that we use. We also have a partnership now with Peguis First Nation. I thought I'd share that because I think it debunks other myths about this approach, about it being insensitive to particular cultures and so on. So Peguis First Nation has joined us in a reciprocal relationship where they're learning alongside us around some of the structured literacy work that we do and that they had already begun to undertake, and we're learning from them more and more about land-based education and Indigenous education. So we're also going to the Yukon to learn from the First Nation School Board there that's done amazing work around structured literacy as well, and we're going there in partnership with folks from Peguis. So there's all kinds of opportunity for this to be part of a reconciliatory work. So here's some of the programs we use: spelling through morphographs, rewards, direct instruction, novel studies, fluency. We can combine content knowledge from subject areas with our fluency work, and so kids are also building background knowledge, which is really important as we start to address all the other parts of, all the other strands of Scarborough's reading rope. See how much I've learned? And so we're also taking this broad view or deeper view of reading that goes beyond just decoding and so on. But these are all the things that we're now trying and that we've expanded to. I just wanted to share a few hopes and fears because I do have some fears. I really thought it was like, okay, by the time the report comes out, everyone's going to be on board already because they can see it coming, can't they? But I still have fears. Some of the stuff that I hear still gives me pause, and so I do fear that some will continue to have kind of a defensive stance around this or a territorial stance around it and resist change. I really hope we don't do that, but I fear some of that's still out there. I fear that pre-service teacher ed is not interested in changing. And it's so important that we do provide support to our pre-service teachers to know how to do this most foundational and basic thing, as the letter to the editor pointed out. I heard recently that there are places about to spend a whole bunch of money on Fountas and Pinnell materials. It's disconcerting, right? I don't want us to focus too much on accommodations before we put in the effort to make sure the kids have the chance to learn to read. So I have a bit of a fear about that. I fear the divisive language sometimes that comes from those being defensive. So I hear this stuff that I think is about like, trust the teacher knows best. And I think that like, I don't mistrust teachers, but as my team at that table illustrates, we've got an array of expertise, training, and talent, and so on. And it's like, I feel like this language is intended to divide in exactly the opposite way that I wanted to bring together student services and curriculum and instruction. Our clinicians, our speech paths, our ed psychs, and so on. Melissa's here too. They have lots to say and in working in collaboration with our teachers for the betterment of our kids. So we can't do this divisive stuff. My hopes are that we've already seen a change to the ELA curriculum, and that's very positive. My hopes are around the screening tool that the province is directing us to make sure that we use. My hopes are in other school divisions that some of whom have reached out to us and some of whom I just know are also doing the work to make the change. And so I hope, my hope also comes from my team and the teachers and the school leaders that I work with every day in Evergreen. And my hope is also, I'll leave you with this, that we continue to think about how there might be something in it for us to think about explicit instruction and its merits beyond just reading. I mean, we have to get this right, of course, it's the most important thing we do, but I have to tell you, when we start to apply the similar principles elsewhere, we also see massive gains, and we are realizing that now. And in Una's slide about, you know, how I can't remember the language. I should have written it down really quickly, but it's like how damaging and stable it is if you don't get the foundational stuff right. It reminded me so much of what our friend Anna says about how math is relentlessly hierarchical. It's like you better get those foundational pieces right. And lots of that happens through explicit instruction. So I hope that we, as a system, learn from these recommendations, certainly for reading, and most importantly for reading, and that we also start to wonder, what were the other bad words that we were told? What else might we get out of thinking about explicit instruction for other subject areas and important things for our kids, their future, and our collective future? Thanks so much for listening.